Good morning once again to our discussion on principles of economics, and we are discussing market forces. So, in our previous class we saw how market forces like demand and supply, they can determine the equilibrium, price and quantity. So, just to recap, we were talking about this type of demand, this is supply, this is demand, and we said that this demand is basically the inverse demand function that we are talking about, because we are measuring price on the y axis, even though quantity demanded and supply, that is the dependent variable on price, and that is how you determine your equilibrium, quantity and price. Now, one thing we have to keep in mind, that when price is decided in the market by the interaction of demand and supply, that is the market demand we are talking about, right. So, market demand is basically, so what is market demand then? This is market demand and supply. So, it is basically the summation of sum of individual demand. Okay. If you take sum of all the individuals demand, then we will get the market demand. Similarly, there is market supply, which is the sum of individual supply. All right. So, we have to take summation, basically the horizontal summation of demand and supply, and then we have to come up with market supply and market demand. Why we are taking market demand and market supply? Because we are considering the market as a perfectly competitive market. Okay. What is the nature of competitive market? The feature of competitive market, there are n number of buyers and sellers. So, that means no single individual as a buyer or as a seller cannot influence the market outcome. That means, cannot alter the Q star and P star. That is why we are considering only market demand and market supply, not the individual demand and individual supply. At the individual level, people are deciding how much to buy based on their taste and preference, income, so on and so forth, right. When all the individuals are deciding about this, they come to the market and they create the aggregate demand. Similarly, the producers at the individual level, they are thinking whether to supply a particular commodity or not, and if yes, then what is the quantity that a particular supplier wants to supply based on his or her available inputs, technology, so on and so forth. When all of them they form their supply decision, they come to the market and make an aggregate supply. This aggregate demand and aggregate supply decides the market clearing price and quantity. Now, every individual, they will take this P star as given, and then they will decide how much to buy. Okay. When I go to the market of ice cream, I look at what is the price per unit of cone, ice cream cone. So, this P star, please keep in mind, this P star is basically price per unit. So, this is price per unit, and this is the total demand. Okay. So, that means, when price per unit of ice cream cone is P star, in the market there is a total demand of Q star amount faced by all the individuals, right. Similarly, when price is P star, the suppliers will supply this Q star amount. That is why this P star and Q star, they are called equilibrium or market clearing price. P star is called market clearing price. Now, what happens when a price is higher than P star? Suppose to start with, the market price is P1, which is higher than P star. Now, from the diagram itself, you can easily understand, if a price is higher than P star, then there would be more supply than the demand. So, that means there is excess supply. There would be excess supply in the market. Excess supply in the market, and when there is excess supply, that will create a pressure on price downward. So, price will move downward and then it will come back to P star and equilibrium would be achieved. Okay? All right. Secondly, when price is, let us say, P2, when a price is lower than P star, that means P star is higher than, let us say, a particular price P2. Obviously, you can see there is more demand than the suppliers can supply. So, there would be excess demand. And that excess demand will create a pressure on price upward, and once again the equilibrium will be achieved at P star. So, that means it looks like there is some kind of invisible hand in the market, that corrects any deviation from the equilibrium. So, that is why economists, they recognize that invisible hand, first coined by our forefather Adam Smith. Adam Smith, the forefather of economics, he first coined this term invisible hand. So, this invisible hand creates a pressure on the price either downward or upward, depending on whether the existing price is higher or lower than the market clearing price. When the market clearing price is P star, any price above P star will create excess supply. Obviously, if there is excess supply in the market, what will happen? Price will come down. When there are a lot of supply of ice cream and then very few buyers, obviously price will go down. At the same time, if a price is lower than the market clearing price, that will create excess demand in the market. This is called excess demand. And that excess demand will create a pressure on the price upward. That is the rule of invisible hand, and this works in a market which is perfectly competitive in a sense. There are many buyers and sellers, so no single buyer or seller cannot alter the market outcome. That is what we wanted to say in this particular context. Then lastly, we were talking about the movement of the demand and supply curve. Yesterday we were talking about the shift in demand or shift in supply alone, but we may encounter a situation wherein both the demand curve and supply curve shift together, right. So, demand and supply, demand curve and supply curve shift together. Let us say this is the demand and this is the supply, and we are talking about demand and supply of, let us say, ice cream. So, what we are discussing the case? The case what we are discussing, let us say that, let us assume, that weather becomes hot, okay, and price of sugar increases. What will happen? So, this is, let us say, to start with, this is Q star and this is P star, equilibrium price and quantity of ice cream. This is the starting point, and now we are assuming what will happen when weather becomes hot all of a sudden. So, obviously, hot weather means all of us would like to have ice cream. So, demand for ice cream will go up. So, that means weather was considered as a parameter or as a variable? Weather was considered as a parameter. Apart from price, any other factors that influences other price or demand or supply, they were considered as parameter. So, when weather changes all of a sudden, becomes hot, then there would be shift in demand. Okay. So, there will be more demand. So, demand curve will shift from D1, let us say, to D2. All right. Okay. So, we may feel that, okay, that means price will go up, quantity demand will go up, but one more thing is also happening simultaneously. Sugar price is also increasing. So, when sugar price increases, what happens? We discussed already yesterday that an increase in sugar price will lead to reduction in supply, because cost of production will increase, right. So, that means supply curve will also shift upward. Let us say this is the shift in supply, this is S1, this is S2. Okay. So, that means at new equilibrium, what is happening here? Q double star, let us say, and this is P double star. So, quantity demand is increasing and price is also increasing, but we have to clearly keep one thing in mind. When both the things are shifting together, then ultimately what will happen, that depends on the relative magnitude of the shift in demand and supply. In this particular case, demand has increased more. Look at, the demand has increased more than the reduction in supply. Okay. So, that is why there is an increase in price and quantity demand has also increased. Okay. Now, what will happen? Let us say your supply falls more than the demand, or they are proportional. So, that means we can have a situation wherein, let us say, it is proportional. So, what will happen? Supply curve will shift from here. So, that means even though there is an increase in price, quantity demand will be same. Similarly, if supply falls more than the aggregate demand, we can draw another diagram Q, this is P, let us say this is demand, this is supply, this is S1, this is D1. Let us say that increase in demand due to favorable weather is this much, D2. Okay. All right, this is the shift in demand, but supply falls more than proportionate. So, this is S2. This should be parallel, please keep in mind all the things here there would be parallel shift, because for each price there would be more supply or less supply, for each price there would be more demand or less supply. So, that means initial equilibrium was this Q star and this is P star, and now what is happening here, look at Q star and P star, P double star. So, that means quantity demand actually Q falls from Q star to Q double star. Okay. But price is increasing, because both supply reduction and increased demand will obviously result in increased price, right, increase in price. But whether the Q will fall or not, that depends on the relative shift of the demand and supply. In the first case, this is case 1, in the first case what was happening, demand curve shifted more due to warm weather or hot weather than the reduction in supply. That is why we got a hike in price, at the same time what we got, that quantity demand also increased from Q star to Q double star. In the second case, what we have discussed, quantity demand has increased because of the favorable weather, but price for supply falls more than proportionate due to the price increase in sugar, as a result of which Q falls from Q star to Q double star, but there is an increase in price. So, therefore, price has increased in both the cases, but quantity Q has either increased in case 1 or decreased in case 2. So, basically the intuition is here, due to warm weather there is a lot of demand for ice cream, okay, lot of demand. Let us say there is 20%, this shift is 20%, but the suppliers are not able to supply that 20%. So, that means due to an increase in price, maybe since there is a fall in supply, there is quantity demand is increasing, but not that much. That is why it is increasing only a lower amount, even though the demand has increased by a huge amount. Had the supply been constant, look at here, the demand would have shifted this much. Okay. If S1 was constant, if supply was constant at S1, in market we would have experienced a larger increase in quantity, but that is not happening, because suppliers are also reducing their supply a little bit because of the increase in price of sugar. That is why even though it has increased, the initial increase in demand has been crowded out by the fall in supply. That is what is happening. Okay. Now, you can create another case. Let us say there is favorable weather, there is fall in sugar price. So, what will happen? So, demand will increase, supply will also increase. What will happen in that case? So, you can create different cases and think about what would be the net impact of these forces on the new equilibrium price and quantity. Okay. All right. So, this is how we need to think about alternative cases. Now, let us assume that there is an increase in price, and law of demand says that when there is an increase in price, quantity demand will fall. Then what would be the net impact on your revenue? Suppose you are a manager, you want to raise the price of your product, and you know that if I raise my price, quantity demand will fall by law of demand. Then what would be the net impact on revenue? Will it fall? Will it increase, or will it remain same? This is an important question that every seller, every manager has to face while operating in the market. And what would be the net impact on revenue because of a price change? It depends on what is the percentage change in quantity due to a percentage change in price, and that we can understand from a very important concept called elasticity of demand. Let us talk about that. Elasticity of demand. So, what I was saying, that total revenue equals to, all we know is P into Q. When there is an increase in price, quantity demand will fall. That is law of demand. This is coming from law of demand. Then what is the net impact on total revenue? That depends on what is the percentage change in price. Suppose price increases by 10%, but quantity demand falls only by 5%. So, obviously, there would be a net increase in total revenue. If I reverse this case, if price increases by 5% and quantity demand falls by 10%, there would be a net reduction in total revenue. Similarly, if price increases by 5%, quantity demand also falls by 5%, then there would be no change in the total revenue. So, that means this is a pertinent question to know then what exactly will happen to the net revenue of the firm if the firm is changing the price, and that is where elasticity of demand comes into play. Elasticity basically is a concept which economists they borrowed from physics. All of you studied in your class 2 physics about the concept of elasticity. Can you recall what is elasticity? All of us we learned that elasticity is basically a property of a matter. When a force is imposed externally on a matter, then the matter gets deformed, and once the force is taken out, then the matter will try to come back to its initial situation. Okay? So, that means how the matter is responding towards that force. Same concept, how the demand is responding to the external forces, and that is how it is defined as elasticity. Now, if you recall once again, demand for a particular commodity was a function of price, let us say P x, then price of related product, then income, taste and preference, so on and so forth. If we keep taste and preference aside, because that is very difficult to measure, then at least we can get 3 factors P x, P y and income, that basically which we can easily measure, and we can define elasticity of demand with respect to these 3 factors. Let us first talk about own price. That means, this is we are talking about price elasticity of demand. Price, in the bracket I am writing own, price elasticity of demand. So, when there is a change in price, there would be a change in quantity demand. Let us convert that into percentage. So, Q x by delta Q x by Q x, this is demand, divided by delta P x by P x. Okay. So, that means, this can be modified as delta Q by delta P Q x into P x by Q x. This is how elasticity of demand is defined. Percentage change in quantity demanded for 1% change in the price. This is the first elasticity measure, which is also known as price elasticity of demand, okay, which is also known as price elasticity of demand. Now, look at this first factor delta Q by delta P. Now, if you draw your demand curve, let us say this is Q, this is P and this is the demand. Okay. Now, if we measure in this way, what is delta Q by delta P? We can easily understand delta Q by delta P is nothing but inverse of the slope, inverse of the slope of demand. Okay. So, that means, we can understand that higher the slope, lower would be the elasticity of demand. So, since elasticity of demand is related to inverse of the slope multiplied by price and quantity ratio, higher the slope, lower would be the quantity, higher the slope, lower would be elasticity. Now, how do you understand? It is very easy to understand. Suppose this particular demand is here, initially this is Q1, this is P1. Now, when there is a change in price, let us say price is falling and quantity demand is increased by this much. But if you draw your demand little flatter, let us say this is your demand, then for the same unit of price fall, let us say this is initial price, but the same unit of price fall, you see there is a huge increase in your quantity demand. Okay. So, price fall is same, but just because your demand has now become flatter, your quantity demand is increasing to a larger extent. So, one thing what we have learned, that slope of the demand curve, you have to keep in mind very carefully, slope of the demand curve elasticity is inversely related. Higher the slope, lower is the elasticity. Lower the slope, when you are making the demand curve flatter, that means what you are doing? You are reducing the slope. So, when you are reducing the slope, what is happening? Your elasticity is actually increasing. And what is the meaning of higher elasticity? Higher elasticity means consumers are more responsive for that particular commodity. All right. Okay. So, this is basically the elasticity of demand with respect to price. Since slope of the demand curve is always negative, price elasticity of demand is always a negative. But when we talk about elasticity, we remove the negative sign and we report its elasticity without the sign, because it is always negative. There is no extra intuition or inference we can make from the negative sign. That is why, since demand curve is always downward sloping, that means negatively sloped, price elasticity of demand, let us consider this as epsilon p, okay, price elasticity of demand. Epsilon p is always negative. Okay. So, that means depending on the value of, so it is always negative, therefore, EP is always reported without the negative sign. Okay. Now, there can be three cases depending on the relative increase and relative change in price and relative change in quantity demanded, as I was discussing earlier. There can be three alternative cases. Case 1, EP is greater than 1. Okay. So, that means what we are saying, delta Q by Q is greater than delta P by P. So, we call that type of demand curve, that type of demand is elastic demand. So, this is known as elastic demand. For elastic demand, if there is a price increase, that means quantity demand will fall more than proportionate. So, there would be a fall in total revenue. So, that means if price increases, that will lead to net fall in total revenue. At the same time, if price falls, then quantity demand will increase more than proportionate net increase in total revenue. This we have to keep in mind. For elastic demand, when the price is increasing, quantity demand will fall more than proportionate, okay, more than proportionate, as a result of which total revenue will fall. When the price is falling, quantity demand will increase more than proportionate, as a result of which there would be a net increase in total revenue. So, this is case 1. Then case 2, EP is less than 1, that means delta Q by Q is less than delta P by P, and that we know as inelastic demand. What will happen in this case if there is a price fall? If price falls, then quantity demand will increase, but less than proportionate. Okay? If there is a price fall, then quantity demand will increase, but less than proportionate. That means total revenue also will fall. So, in this case, if price falls, then quantity demand will increase, but less than proportionate. All right. So, that will lead to net fall in total revenue. Similarly, if there is price increase, quantity demand will fall, but less than proportionate. Okay? Quantity demand will fall, but less than proportionate, that means net increase in total revenue. This is case 2, inelastic demand, and in case 3, when elasticity of demand is equals to 1, that means delta Q by Q is equals to delta P by P. So, when there is a fall in demand, if price increases, then what will happen? So, this is known as unitary elastic demand. When there is a price increase, quantity demand will fall exactly by same proportion. So, no change in total revenue. Similarly, when there is price fall, also no change in total revenue if the good is unitary elastic in nature. Okay, if the good is unitary elastic in nature. So, that means this idea of own price elasticity, this is called price elasticity of demand or elasticity of demand with respect to price. This is an useful tool to understand what will happen to the net revenue when there is increase or decrease in price. It all depends on the nature of elasticity. Elasticity of demand, it can be greater than 1 or less than 1 or exactly equals to 1. okay, exactly equals to 1. All right. So, if it is greater than 1, then we said that the good is known as unitary. If it is greater than 1, then it is called elastic demand. If it is less than 1, it is called inelastic demand. If it is equals to 1, it is known as unitary elastic. Okay. So, this is the elasticity of demand with respect to price. Now, as we said that demand depends on not only its own price, but also price of related product and income. Therefore, we can get two other measures of elasticity of demand, but the idea is same. If we change the denominator, instead of delta q by q divided by delta p by p, we have to put delta p y. If we assume y is a related product, then we will get another measure of elasticity of demand that I will discuss in our next session. Thank you.